Well, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about being a writer, and you can apply these to the book or some other things. Since you're a PhD in history, you've undoubtedly written other things, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So what is the best part about being a writer for you, maybe as you're researching this book and working on it?
I think it's two aspects of it. I mean, one is the research. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you find some of the, not all thoughts just spring freshly formed from your head. There's some sort of muse. And well, for the historian, it's the research. It's finding these little tidbits, and it takes a lot of time. You're spending hours in an archive, and then flipping through pages and page after page after page, and then you finally see something that says, "Aha! This is what I've been looking for," and then taking that small piece of information and fleshing it out, and crafting and weaving a story around it. And then finding and filling it out with other archival information, and then going and writing about it and saying, okay, how do I capture the essence of what I found here? As a writer, that's very exciting.
What was your favorite little something that you found that you then got to flesh out? What was a really big aha moment for you when you were writing this book, for example?
There are a couple. Big aha moments. One of the things, just broadly configured, is I started this book in looking at 1965, and as a historian I was very interested in origins, and so I kept going back and back and back and back looking for these origins, and say, well, how do these rural folk embrace or come to embrace black power? We often think of black power as being an urban phenomenon and an urban northern phenomenon, but here were these rural folk who really define black power, and then as I was looking back, I began to have a series of aha moments as I found that, what they were doing in 1965, organizing for political power, organizing their own institutions and for economic autonomy and for social autonomy, that this is what they had been doing for generations. And so dating back to emancipation, finding, evidence of them organizing their own independent schools, organizing a farmers' co-op at the turn of the century, Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois down there writing about these things. Those were moments where I was excited to find information, but then it also really illuminated this much larger phenomenon of, well, why do things happen in 1965 and play out the way that they do?
Okay, so getting all the background, which is probably why you're a historian. What's the worst part about being a writer?
Well, writing is hard, right? You can't be confused about that. Writing is difficult. And so I think there's two aspects. One, trying to figure out exactly how to say what it is you want to say. And for me, often I sort of think of that as sort of writer's block. Well, two things, right? Either one, you don't know what you really want to say, so you can't write it, or the frustration of knowing what you want to say, but not finding the words, not being able to craft that sentence or paragraph or that transition that will allow you to say it the way you want to do. And then you got to go back to the drawing board and completely rewrite it, or move some things around. That's one side. The other side is on the research side, and as a historian, you're committed to tell the truth. There were times when I was like, oh man, this would be a great story if I just tweak this here or change that there, but that's not what our charge is. Right? I mean, we have our own oath that we have to take, if you will, and that is to uncover the truth whether you like it or not. And so being wedded to that, and so the writer in me wants to take off in a different direction sometimes. We say, well, that's not where the evidence leads me.
Do you do other kinds of writing? Are there other genres that you work at?
Not so much. I mean, I dabble and play around, but my sort of creative writing really finds more expression in reading fiction and stuff like that.
What's the best writing job you've had?
I would say this.
Okay.
And when I say this, I mean sort of being able to write my book on Lowndes County, and being a writer as a history professor, because I'm able to write whatever I want to write. There's no limits on topic, there's no limit on subject, there's no limit on chronology, and so there's free reign. So, I came up with the topic because that's what I wanted to do. I was interested in SNCC, I was interested in Lowndes County, and so, go ahead and make it happen.
What's the worst writing job you've had?
I worked, when I was an undergraduate, school, doing some research for a professor, and he was writing a dictionary, sort of a dictionary of biographies and stuff like that. Oh, and it was actually absolutely dreadful. You know, because there was research involved, and you're writing these formulaic sort of entries, and it was painful. But it was useful as practice, because writing, you know, is craft, is practice. Okay. But it was not exciting at all.
Okay. What would you do if you weren't a writer or historian? What other things do you think you might get into? What do you dream of?
Realistically, or you know, I always had this, and unfortunately, I think my window is closing rather quickly, of playing professional baseball. But that is again, that window. The steroids era is over. I don't think that's going to be able to help me. So that window is closing rapidly. But
that window closed on me when I was about 2.
Exactly. So. And then I think it might have closed for me around that same time as well. Yeah. But the dream was always still there. And so actually one of the things that I do enjoy a little bit, and have been able to work in somewhat, is writing about sports. Not for a newspaper or anything, but, you know, sort of the historical aspects of sports, and teaching about sports and race in America.
So baseball is your sport?
Baseball would be my sport.
Okay.
Baseball.
And that's the one you'd want to write about?
That's the one I would want to write about. It was then there's a lot there. I mean, it mirrors sort of American history, particularly in the modern era, post 1965, 1865. It's a rich history. The Negro Leagues and industry. I mean, it really is a rich history.
Oh, Columbus has a couple of, I think, baseball teams that are the old style, you know, baseball teams as well, the historical style. They play at the Ohio Historical Center every now and then. Who's your biggest influence? There are a lot of historians whose names we've come to know, and I'm curious, do you pattern some of your thoughts after that, or some of the writing style? Who is it that you really look to as a great historical writer?
Well, I think there's a mix of people. And I sort of have been drawing on and looking to different people over the years. My area of expertise and specialty is African American history, so there are a number of great African American historians and African American writers over the years who I've really looked to for inspiration, to sort of pick up where, in some instances, they left off. I think John Hope Franklin immediately comes to mind, perhaps because he just passed away. But he has always served, for me and for so many other historians for generations, as somebody to model my craft after. But then there's also the luminaries of W.E.B. Du Bois. And when I found him down in Lowndes County, living there for half a year in 1906, to be able to walk in his shadow, follow in his footsteps in my own little way, to talk about this history a decade later, was really something that I found inspiring.
This probably goes back to the baseball thing, but what's your secret vice of an author or a genre, something that people would be surprised to know that a serious historical scholar would really like to read?
Well, for me, I think it's a mix. I mean, one, I'm writing, you know, on this, you know, African American activism and you know, civil rights and Black Power in the '60s, and I actually enjoy to a great deal not just science fiction but fantasy novels, and I've been deep into this series by George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones, and I've been, you know, I started in graduate school, and I've been, you know, looking forward to it. Each edition, each book in this series that comes out, and so my wife gets on me a little bit about it, and she says, "Yeah, that's real revolutionary." But I said, it's about politics. It's about politics, right? You know, and I'm also part of the Dungeons and Dragons generation. So
now see, now you've gone too far. Really, that's sort of I shouldn't have let you go that far in talking about it. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and I recommend the book Bloody Lowndes: Civil Rights and Black Power in America's Black Belt, and Alabama's Black Belt. I'm sorry. And here's the book. It's available July 1st. July 1. And it'll be at Amazon and fine booksellers everywhere. And we thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.